Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter. Do we begin again to commend ourselves? Or need we, as some others, epistles of commendation to you? Or letters of commendation from you? Let's read this. Maybe I might even pull it up side by side. Yeah. So I'll read this. For certain verses, if they sound a bit clearer, in the NLT, I'll just read it from there, or I'll read in the KJV and then read it there as well. So verse 1, it says, "Are we beginning to praise ourselves again? Are we like others?" Because remember, that's what he ended off the previous chapter with that, right? Like saying how you have some that preach for lucre's sake and so on, but we're not like that. So he's saying here, does it sound like we're beginning to praise ourselves again? Are we like others who need to bring you letters of recommendation or ask you to write such letters on their behalf? Surely not, right? We don't need to come with letters of recommendation to prove our apostleship or need you to write some for us. So when we go other places, we can show like, hey, look, verse 2, ye are our epistle written in our hearts, known and read of all men. So here he likens them onto being like an epistle themselves, right? Written in our hearts, right? In our minds, known and read of all men. So all those that witness and see you are it's like them reading our epistle. You are like a personification of our epistle. For as much as ye are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Hamashiach, ministered by us, right? So it is openly declared that you are like an epistle of Yahushai, ministered or taught by us, right? So through Yahushai, through us, has made you manifest. Okay, you're like the result of the labor here, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. So just like you would write a letter or an epistle, with like a pen and paper, and in this case with ink, he's here saying like you were written by the Lord using us with the Spirit, not with ink, and not in tables of stone, but in fleshly tables of the heart. So in the NLT, it says, clearly you are a letter from Hamashiach showing the result of our ministry among you. This letter is written not with pen and, and ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. It is carved not on the table or tablets of stone, because, some writings, that's how they would do it, right? They would etch it in a stone or in a tablet, a clay tablet, but on human hearts. Matter of fact, I'll pull this up as needed. Verse 4, and such trust have we through Hamashiach to God ward, right? That we trust that you are qualified to be likened unto an epistle of us. Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God. So we're not saying this to say that it's of us, like that we're enough to make this happen, but this is really through the power of the Lord, who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. When he says the letter, he's referring back to the law. So he's saying the Lord has made us ministers of the New Testament, not of the law that was given and inscribed, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. So now he's not saying, necessarily when he says that it killeth, it means that of the law comes death, because we can't keep it perfectly. So we're not going to gain life eternal through that, but rather through the Spirit, because through the Spirit we gain life through believing in Yahushai. But if the ministration of death, written and graven in stones, was glorious, so that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses. So that's your proof. He's talking about the law. So the ministration of death, he's talking about the law. Okay. Written and engraven in stones was glorious. So if that was glorious, that law was glorious, so glorious that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses for the glory of his countenance, which glory was to be done away. All right. So he's saying that when you go back to the law or the Torah, remember when Moses came down from the mount after receiving the instructions and the laws, his face was shining so much that he had to put a veil on. And Paul is saying here that was a temporary glory. But if that which he likens onto the ministration of death, because it wasn't going to bring us to life eternal, it wasn't going to be what justified us. He's saying if that was glorious, how shall not the ministration of the Spirit be rather glorious? Right? So the Spirit that gives life, wouldn't that be much more glorious? If the ministration of death was glorious, how much more glorious is the Spirit that gives life? For if the ministration of condemnation be glory, much more doth the ministration of righteousness exceed in glory. Once again, referring back to the law, right? If the officiating or of the service of the law, which he likens to of condemnation, be glory, because even that, there was glory in that, even though it was temporary compared to that of the Spirit. Much more doth the administration of righteousness exceed in glory, which the administration of righteousness, he likens that to the gospel of Yahushua. For even that which was made glorious had no glory in this respect, by reason of the glory that excelleth. Meaning, compared to this glory, right, to the glory of this gospel, that the glory of the law is really no glory. NLT, in fact, that first glory was not glorious at all compared with the overwhelming glory of the new way. For if that which is done away was glorious, much more that which remaineth is glorious. So if the old way, which has been replaced, was glorious, how much more glorious is the new, which remains forever? And he's putting in perspective the emphasis on this way of salvation that we have through Yahushua. Verse 13, seeing then that we have such hope, we use great plainness of speech. And when you go into that word plainness, it's it's more than just like using simple words, but boldness, right? Freedom in speaking, unreserved in speech, open, frankly, without concealment, without ambiguity, free and fearless, confident, cheerful, courage, boldness. See, because he's saying like knowing the glory that is of this ministration, we speak with that much more confidence, right? Seeing that we have this kind of hope, and not as Moses, which put a veil over his face, that the children of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end of that which is abolished. We are not like Moses, who put a veil over his face so the people of Israel would not see the glory, even though it was destined to fade away. But their minds were blinded. For until this day remaineth the same veil untaken away in the reading of the Old Testament. So just like they couldn't directly behold Moses' face because of the veil that was put on, here Paul is saying there's now similarly a veil. This is a spiritual veil, not a physical one, but a spiritual veil that is over their hearts. So as he says, for until this day remaineth the same veil untaken away in the reading of the Old Testament, which veil is done away in Hamashiach, which is spiritual, because when Yahushua died, the actual veil that was in the temple rent, right? It said it ripped, okay? And that veil, I believe, is the covering before the place where the Ark of the Covenant would usually be placed. But when you read this in the NLT, as Paul is saying here, but the people's minds were hardened. Wait, is this the right verse? Yep. And to this day, whenever the Old Testament is being read, the same veil covers their minds, so they cannot understand the truth. And this veil can be removed only by believing in Hamashiach. So even though they go into the synagogues and they read, that's why Paul, when he would go in there, what he would teach would differ from the things that they were accustomed to to hearing, because they didn't fully understand, because that veil, that spiritual veil, was still over their minds. So even when they read the law, they couldn't see that this is talking about Yahweh Shai. When they would read those same verses, they couldn't see that this was actually applying to Yahweh Shai, having to come and fulfill this, because that veil was still on them, and other parts of the scriptures of old that they didn't understand. But even onto this day, when Moses is read, the veil is upon their heart. So even when they go in there and they read the writings of Moses, they still don't understand, because that spiritual veil is blocking their heart. Nevertheless, when it shall turn to the Lord, the veil shall be taken away. So whenever one turns to the Lord, that's when that veil is taken away. Then they actually get the full understanding of the writings and basically what it all comes down to. And this is like how the Lord expounded to his disciples all the things in the law written of him. And you think that was the only thing he taught them? No. But that was the main part of it. Remember, he says he comes in the volume of the book. It is written of him. Now the Lord is that spirit. And what spirit? The spirit of truth. And where the spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. For we, it could, i.e., freedom. So we're not bound, okay, by a law that we can't even keep 100%, and we're just under it, basically suffering the cycle of death. But through Yahweh Shai, we have that liberty and that freedom to be able to have, we're not perfect now, but we still have an avenue or a way to gain perfection, actually, right? Through him. But we all, with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. It says here, so all of us who have had that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed into his glorious image. So first starting, mentally putting on the mind of Yahweh Shai, and spiritually, right, striving on to perfection, getting better and better, becoming more like Yahweh Shai each day. Ultimately, when there's another part where he mentions that when that which is whole, right, comes, which is Yahweh Shai, then we which know in part or have in part will be made whole. See, so when the Lord comes back, we would be like him. But right now we're striving to get to that point, but it's going to be fully accomplished when the Yahweh Shai comes back. And that brings us to the end of the book of 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.